Pointers and arrays. Yes. So we had discussed how pointers and arrays are related and how you can use pointers to access the elements of an array. Okay, you can't hear me. All the others, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Okay, so for who else the voice is not clear? Before you guys ask your questions, first let us determine whether the voice is clear to everybody or not. For others, is the voice clear? Okay, so Salha, at your end, is it clear now or is it still fluctuating? Okay, no response from Salha. Okay, while we wait for her, Usman Tahir, you have a question. Usman Tahir, please go ahead and ask your question. Okay, no response from Usman Tahir as well. Okay, so as I was saying that we had discussed how you can use pointers to access the members of an array, the elements of an array. Okay, so it's not clear. I don't know what I can do because I have already plugged in the wire cable, so we are not on Wi-Fi. So wired internet is the best we have at our institute, so I'm not sure I can do any better. So kindly wait for a while, and if it is still not clear, you can signal it again, but I'm not sure what we can do right now.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but wait a minute, please. So Saleh, if it continues, you signal us again, but I'm not sure we can do much. I'm afraid in that case you'll have to hear the recording online. Okay. So yes, Usman Tahir, you wanted to ask something?
जी सर, तो सर आप जो पढ़ा रहे हैं वो नहीं पढ़ा रहे हैं ना, ही आप रैंडम पढ़ा रहे हैं.
No, the order of topics may be the order of the topics may be different, but the things in the book are the same that I am teaching.
सही है सर. A lot of guys have a lot of problem मेरे ख्याल से समझने में कि सब टॉपिक्स क्या क्या हैं. तो उन्होंने मुझे कहा था कि आपको आपसे बात करेंगे अगर सही क्लैरिफाई कर दिया करें कि व्हाट यू आर स्टडीइंग टुडे, और सारा नहीं सीन काफी प्रॉब्लम हो रही है लोगों को. तो ये था बस.
No, it's okay. I mean, if there are concerns, you guys should convey to me. That's no problem. So what exactly are the concerns? Like, what do you mean by subtopics? Let's say we have studied what are pointers and what are arrays, how pointers are related to arrays, and how you can use loops and pointers to access the elements of an array, and how you can pass uh, arrays to functions. Okay, these are topics that we have covered in class. Is it right? Hello, Usman.
यस सर। सर मैं यानी उनको जिनको प्रॉब्लम थी मैं उनको ही कहता हूँ कि आपसे बात करें, वो शायद ज़्यादा क्लियरली तो कन्वे कर देंगे क्या प्रॉब्लम है।
Hani, sure. Or if you have understood their problem, you can also speak on their behalf. Like, what do you mean by subtopics and what kind of things are posing problems?
सर असल में
सर
उनको समझ नहीं आ रहा कि वो पढ़ें कैसे, यानी अब उनको यानी मेन प्रॉब्लम यही है कि मटेरियल होना चाहिए जो उन्हें पढ़ना चाहिए, नेट से पढ़ें या बुक से पढ़ें, क्योंकि बुक में मेरे ख्याल से उन्हें मुश्किल हो रही है क्योंकि टॉपिक्स जनरल हैं, इस तरह कोई मेरे ख्याल से सीन है।
So, what kind of things are different in a book? Like, what kind of things, when you study them in the book, you are unable to understand them?
सर बुक में ना बहुत आगे की चीजें, बहुत मतलब कि वो चलते ही जाते हैं, कंसाइज नहीं हुआ होता, तो पता नहीं होता हमें कि कहाँ पर एंड करना है, कहाँ तक पढ़ना है।
No. If if the topics are the same, then even if the book is not concise, that is not important. In fact, it's a good thing if the author of the book is taking a lot of time to explain things in a longer fashion. So, have you studied anything in the book that is totally different and that you have not been able to understand at all?
तो एग्जाम्पल प्रॉब्लम्स में मेरे ख्याल से वो मैनेट की लाइब्रेरी और सी स्ट्रिंग की यूज है, तो मेरे ख्याल से इस वजह से थोड़ी ज़्यादा कंफ्यूजन हो रही हो। ये मालिक की बुक में मेरे ख्याल से एग्जाम्पल्स में यूज करते हैं ये लाइब्रेरी।
Strings is one thing that we have not studied. But string, basically, if you guys treat string as a type and then just use it as a type, just like you would use an integer or something else, won't that solve the problem? Is Saim Iqbal, you have raised your hand. Do you want to say something?
यार जिसको प्रॉब्लम है यार अभी बोल दो फॉरएवर।
We'll come to these things later, project, etc. We'll come to these things later. For the now, we are dealing with the question that Usman Tahir had asked, that some of you are having difficulty following the course and you guys don't know which subtopics are being studied and how to study from the book. So regarding that, if anybody has any comments, you guys can speak in English, in Urdu, in whatever you can express yourself best. Hello. If you guys have any issues, you should express them. You will not be penalized for that. Which chapter did we study in book? Kindly if you name them. Okay, I will send you the chapters, but mainly if you can find the chapters on arrays, on functions, these things we have studied in class and normally you should be able to understand them in the book. But I'll mail you the exact chapter names. In book, we don't have an idea where to start. Normally, the starting place should have been from the start of the book. Because in the book, they will explain things in a linear fashion. Things would build on each other. So you should start from the start of the book and try to understand different topics as they come. So again, I think the book will also start in the same way. It would introduce types, then it would introduce input output, and then it would introduce if else, conditional statements, loops, arrays, functions, etc. The book may introduce functions first and arrays later, but only the order of the topics may be different, but things should be same. Okay, but I'll mail you the chapter names and what topic do they contain. Anything else? Yes, you can pass 2D arrays as arguments to functions. What is the purpose of using pointers? So who can tell me what is the purpose of using pointers? What can we do with pointers? Why do we use pointers? What is a pointer? Let's start from the beginning. To access the address, okay. Manipulate the value of a variable using its address. Very good, very good. That's what we do using pointers. But why do we do it? Why do we manipulate the value of variable using its address? We can use them to manipulate memory locations, which come in handy when dealing with arrays and strings. Okay, so basically this is the same. Okay, there's one more. It is less memory intensive than copying the value. Very good. Pointers are used to store and manage addresses of dynamically allocated object blocks. Many blocks are used to store objects, arrays, tick, tick, tick. Most structured object-oriented languages use provide an area in memory called heap. Okay, so this, Uzair, this is something that we have not studied yet. Okay, so we'll not discuss it. Dynamic memory allocation and heap, etc. We'll study it in the next few weeks. So right now we'll build on what we have studied so far. So yes, pointers are used to manipulate array values using their addresses or any variable values using their addresses, and we can also, as Rafi said, instead when passing values to a function, you can either pass a value by copy or you can pass it address by copy. Okay, if you pass a value by copy, then you will not be able to modify the original value from within the function. Okay, so to be able to modify the original value from within the function, you can't pass the argument by value or by copy. Okay, you have to pass the argument either by reference or you pass the address of the original value as argument. Okay, so yes, both are methods with which we can manipulate or change the original value of the argument that we wanted to pass into the function. Okay, so again, the answer is that we use pointers to change the values of a variable using its address, and this is useful in manipulating arrays as well as passing arguments to a function so that we can modify the original value from within the function. Is it clear, Ahmed, why we use pointers? Okay, no response from Ahmed, but I will add here that these pointers, they are inherited. You guys know that C has evolved from C, okay, and pointers are inherited from C. The thing is, C language does not have reference variables. Okay? C language has pointers. So when we want to modify the original value of an argument from within the function in C language, we have only one way. We have to use pointers. Okay, because C language does not has reference variables. So that legacy has been inherited into C++, and C++ added reference variables, but we also have pointers that we have added from C. So in C++, when we want to modify the original value of an argument from within the function, we have two choices. Either we can use reference variables or we can use pointers. Okay. There's also a thing that Ozair said that we can dynamically allocate memory, etc., but that we'll study in next couple of weeks. So before we move further, there was a question about whether we will study vectors. So that you guys will study in the next semester. Vectors we won't be studying in this semester. When we pass arrays as arguments, we are actually passing an argument by reference, right? What do you guys say? When we are passing arrays, are we passing by reference or are we passing the address of the first element of the array? We are passing the address, okay, and the address is passed by copying passed by value, okay. So I think personally I would say that it will be more correct to say that when passing arrays as arguments, we are actually passing the address of the array or the address of the first element of the array by value inside the function, okay. And inside the function, using that address, we can access every element of the array and we can modify the values of the array elements from within the function. Okay. Is it clear to you guys? Okay, as I said, no news will be received as good news, and I'll assume that everything is going fine. So, what shall we do next? Okay, so let me share my screen with you guys first and then see what we can do now. I have a problem, I think. Okay, what we'll do is I'll restart this because it seems it's stuck. So while this thing reboots, you guys can ask any question that you might have.
Sir,
Any question?
sir.
Yes, somebody wanted to say something.
सर स्क्रीन शेयर करो.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, thanks. Actually, I think it was a little disconnected for a couple of minutes. So, okay, so I'll open a code here and let's see how we can use. Last time we were doing, I think, functions and arrays. Okay, so we can do function arrays. Okay, so we had this code that we are passing an array
सर आपकी स्क्रीन नजर नहीं आ रही.
नहीं आ रही? Okay, let me reshare this. Is it visible now?
Sir, it's pitch black.
Yes sir.
Okay, so I think the thing is that it got disconnected for a minute on my side, and after that the screen sharing was also disabled and I had to do it again. Okay, so do you guys remember these functions? We were passing an array as an argument to a function and finding the maximum value within that array. Okay, and then we were returning the maximum value. So we had passed the array. Let me put line numbers. In line number 4, we had passed the array as a normal array. The type we had written an array. And in line number 18, max num 2, we passed the array as an address pointer. We received the array address as a pointer, and then using that pointer, we accessed all the elements of the array. And then in max num 3, we said that we are receiving a pointer, but inside the variable, we use inside the function, we used this variable array, which was originally a pointer, like on line number 32. It's defined as a pointer, but inside the function, we are using this pointer as an array, okay, with these square brackets and array index, etc. So this tells you that pointers and arrays are deeply linked, okay, since the times of C language. So this is basically how we pass arrays to a function, and how do we use those array arguments inside the function. So inside, when we pass array to a function, we are not passing or copying the whole array in the function. We are just copying the address of the array and passing it to the function. And within the function, when we access that array using that address, we are accessing the original array, okay, not a copy of the array inside the function. Is it clear to you guys? Is it clear that when we pass an array, we do not pass the whole copy of the array. We do not make a copy of the array when we pass an array. Okay, arrays are passed by sending their addresses. Okay, so a copy of the address of the array is made, and from within the function, using that address, we access the original array, which is outside the function. Can you explain maximum 3? In maximum 3, basically the array that we will pass, and let me first go to main where we pass that array. So in main on line number 53, we are calling maximum and we are passing it this array AI. Okay, AI on line number 50, you can see it's an array of integers. Okay, so we are passing it the array AI. So if you look at the definition of maximum 3, you will see on line number 32 that the first argument is not declared as an array, but rather it's declared as a pointer. Okay? And so you guys remember that we had discussed that the name of the array actually contains the address of the first element of the array. Okay, so when we pass the array here on line number 53, we are passing the address of the first element of the array to the function maximum 3. Okay, and the function maximum 3 receives this address on line number 32 in this integer pointer called array. Okay, so we have received the address of the first element of the array AI into this first argument, which is an integer pointer and whose name is array. And inside this function maximum, we are using this integer pointer array as an array. Like here in line number 34, we are using this symbol array in square bracket 0, which is the notation to access the first element of an array. Okay. I had mentioned it in last class that this notation is exactly equal to this. Okay, so array 0 means we are taking the pointer array, adding 0 to it, and then dereferencing that result to access the value of the first element of the array. And similarly, in line number 37, array I, this means we are basically taking the pointer array, adding I to it, and then dereferencing the result to access the ith element of the array. Okay, so basically this is the same thing as accessing the array using a pointer. You can either do it as pointer plus index and then dereference it, or you can write pointer and inside the brackets you can write the index to access the value of that particular element of the array. Is it clear how it's working maximum 3? Apart from this array access thing, the rest is the same as max1 and max12. The functionality is actually the same, only we have changed how we access the array in each of these functions. Okay. So if this is clear, then I think we can introduce another concept which we will call the scope of a variable. I'll write it here. Okay, so this is another concept used in programming languages. You know what are variables? There is an associated concept which is called scope of variable. So have you guys heard this name scope or this concept, or do you guys know what do we mean when we say when we talk about the scope of variable? Okay, Mahmoud Farah, go ahead and explain to us what do we mean by the scope of variable. Local or global, but what does that mean, local or global? Uzair, go ahead.
Sir, scope of a variable means that where the variable is valid. Means, sir, if we declare a global variable at the start, so it is valuable everywhere in the program. For example, if we create 100 of functions, so the global variable will be valid there. But if we declare a variable inside a specific function, so maybe that variable doesn't work in the other function. So that is the scope
Maybe,
of variable.
what do you say, maybe, or is it something that is sure?
It is something that is sure.
Okay, okay. So, okay, one thing is, I think we should define two dimensions of this concept scope. We can define scope in two different ways. Okay, so I'll write it here and propose that we define scope one in terms of lifetime, which means when does variable starts existing and for how long it lives. Okay, lives mean it is accessible. Okay. And two is accessibility from where or which parts of the program. Wait a minute. Okay, so I'm not typing on the screen. I'm typing. I have typed in the chat. Okay, no, the screen is frozen because I'm not doing anything on the screen. I've typed in the chat. In chat, I have written that let us give two dimensions to this idea of scope. In one, we will say lifetime of a variable, the scope of a variable. It can be of two types: the lifetime of a variable and the accessibility of the variable. Okay, by accessibility we means from which parts of the program we can access this variable. And from lifetime we would say when does uh, um, variable comes into being, when does it starts existing, when does it start its life, and up till which point in program the variable will continue to exist, and after which point the variable will be destroyed. Okay, so let us see and define scope in these two dimensions. So first is, let's take number two first, accessibility, because Uzair just mentioned global and local variables. Okay, so global and local variables, basically we will say that uh, global variables are those that are defined outside any function. Okay. If a variable is defined outside any function in C or C++, it's called a global variable. And in terms of accessibility, global variables are accessible from which parts of your code? Global variables are accessible from which part of the code? Let me go to the screen and define a global variable for you. We'll quit this and we'll see scope. Okay, so is main a function? Is main a function? Yes. Okay. So if I want to define a global variable, shall I define inside main or outside main? Outside. Okay. So global variables by definition are not inside any function. Okay. So to define a global variable, we have to define it outside of every function in the main. So let us define a global variable here. It's, let's call it int global, my global. So now the second question was, when does a global variable, oh sorry, from which parts of the program I can access this global variable? Okay, and as some of you answered that it is accessible from everywhere. So let us define a function f1, and if I want to and let us write here in just to be clear. And here are they. Okay, so I am accessing the variable my global from inside f1 and inside main. Okay, and we are trying to display its value from both of inside both of these functions. Okay, I compiled it, and then if I run it, in main the value of my global is 32. It has not printed the print statement in f1. Why did it do this? Can you guys help me debug this code? Yes, Uzair.
Sir, because we have not called the function in main function.
Very good.
First
Okay,
we will
very good. So we discussed in the beginning of our classes that in C++, the execution starts from main. Okay, and it starts from main. It will basically continue linearly, and the execution will terminate once it reaches the closing curly bracket of main. Okay, outside of main, if we have written any code and we are not calling it in main or in any sub function or function called in main, then that code will not be executed. Okay, so right now f1 is not being called anywhere in main. That's why f1 will not be executed. Okay, so if I want to execute the code in f1, I have to call it somewhere in my program. So let us call it in main. So after printing the value of main, here we call f1. You see, the global variable my global has been defined outside of any function, and it is accessible in any function. Okay, it can be accessed from main, it can be accessed from f1, it can be accessed from any other function that we have defined in our program. So what if I put a print statement here? What if I want to print cout this statement outside of every function? What will happen? Anybody wants to take a guess? You guys might have tried something like this in your program. What will happen if I error? Very good, very good. And why very good? Very good. It will give you an error just like it will give me an error right now if I, let's compile it. You see, cout does not name a type. So the thing is, globally outside every function, we can define variables. We can define variables, we can define functions, we can define things. But we cannot execute code outside any function in C or C++. In C or C++, for a code to be executed, it has to be inside a function. And by calling that function, we will execute that code. Okay? So we cannot, or we are not allowed to execute code outside any function in C++ or C. Is this thing clear? Is this thing clear? That we cannot execute any code outside any function. For a code to be executed in C or C++, it has to be inside a function. Okay, good. So I will basically delete this line because it's causing us an error. So if I wanted to print the value of my global, I can't print it outside any function. I have to print it inside some function. Okay? In which function? I can choose any function because my global is accessible. It's a global variable and it is accessible in any function in my program. Okay, so just like this, I printed this value from within f1 and also from within main. Now let us define a variable and let's call it f1 var, f1 variable. Main variable. So in f1 value of f1 var is and value of, okay, we'll come to this later and oh, I might as well do it now. Main. Okay. Any idea what will be the output of this program if when I compile and execute this program? No, it's not running on my side. Variables are out of scope. Okay, so which variables are out of scope? And before that, let me answer this comment by Mohammed Faris, the only thing we can do outside of function is initialization of variables. Can we do anything else? We can do, we can define variables, we can declare variables. So far, we have been doing it together. Okay, we have been declaring and defining variables together, but we can do it separately also. We can do that. We can declare and define functions outside other functions. We can give preprocessor directives. Hash include, hash, the other things that we can do with a preprocessor hash. We can do all those things outside the functions, okay? But the main action happens inside the functions in a C++ program. Okay, so error variables have become local for each function. Okay, so as your colleague said that this program will give an error, and if we look at the error messages, we will see what is the problem. One thing you guys should, a habit that you guys should develop right now, right from the start, is reading the error messages. Okay? Sometimes the error message will go over your head because there are many things that you guys have not studied yet. But until now, you guys have studied a good number of things. Okay, so now things should be start getting familiar to you guys. So if you develop this habit of reading the error messages, half of your problem or more than half of your problem will be solved at the spot. Okay. What happens in most freshman courses is that people do not read error messages. If I compile this, I get this 2 error. Okay. So on line, it says on line number 12. On line number 12, column 49, error, there's an error. Main var was not declared in this scope. Okay, and here it's giving me this line. Main var was not declared in the scope. Okay, so this line, as you can see, is in function f1. Okay, so it is saying main var was not declared in this scope. Okay. So main variable was not declared in the scope of function f1. Okay, that's why it cannot find main variable, so it gives an error. Similarly, yeah, it also gives you the name of the function in void function. So similarly it gives you in function int main. Line number 19, column 49. Error. F1 var was not declared in this scope. Okay. So now that you guys know the meaning of what a scope is, you should be able to guess where the problem lies. Here on line number 12, it was giving me an error that main var is not declared in this scope. So is main var a global variable or a local variable? Local variable. And where is it defined? In the program? Inside the main. Okay, so the scope of this variable is the function main. Okay, it has been defined in main and its scope is in main, which means and it's available local to main. Okay, similarly the f1 var, it has been defined in the function f1 and it is local to the scope of function f1. So local variables are defined inside the function and their scope is limited to the scope of that function. Okay? Which means in terms of accessibility, while global variables can be accessed from any function, local variables can only be accessed from within the function in whose scope they have been defined. Okay, so f1 var has been defined in f1. It is only accessible from the scope of f1 function. Main var has been defined in main and it's only accessible from within the scope of main function. Okay, so this is the difference that we make in terms of global variables and local variables is scope in terms of accessibility. Global variables are accessible from anywhere. Local variables are accessible from within the scope of the function in which they have been defined. Okay. And now let us talk about the other dimension of scope, which is the lifetime. What is the lifetime of a variable in C++? When does a variable comes into being? When does it start existing? And until which point it lives, or until which point it can be accessed? Yes, Uzair.
Sir, it depend upon the type of variable. Means if it is local, so its lifetime will be in only in the at the time of execution of that function in which the variable is defined. And if it is local, we may access it in different locations. So its lifetime is several means somewhere in the program many times.
Yeah, it can exist, come into being many times, get destroyed many times, but we are talking about one lifetime at any given instant. When will it start existing?
When the program come to the line number where it is called,
Where it is
and
defined, not
yes,
the
where
function
it
or the
is
variable?
defined, the variable
Okay, yeah. So variables are not called, variables are defined or used.
defined where it is defined, and
Okay.
we want to use it where. After that, when the process finishes, its lifetime will be terminated. I means when the work is done, we are done with with the use of the variable, and we put the semicolon, then its lifetime is finished.
Okay, very good. So I'll just remove this errors from here. So main var on line number 12 is not defined in F1, so I'll remove line number 12 from this program. And similarly, F1 var has not been defined inside main on line number 18, so I will remove line number 18 to remove the errors. And now we come to Uzair's explanation that local variable, its lifetime begins when the program reaches the line where it has been defined. Okay, let's take the example of local variable f1. F1 var has been defined on line number 9. Okay, so f1 var is created or comes into being whenever line number 9 is executed inside our program. Okay, so in main we are calling f1, so the execution will ultimately go inside f1 and it will execute line number 9. At that point f1 var will be created, and now it has started existing and it will continue to exist or live until the closing bracket of f1, closing curly bracket. Okay, so local variables are created when the line defining that variable is executed, and they continue to exist until the execution reaches a closing curly bracket. Okay, that might be a function or that might be something else also. I can give you an example. So f1 comes into being on line number 9 and it is destroyed on line number 12. Here f1 has been called only once, but as Uzair said, f1 might be called 1,000 times inside our program. So every time this variable, local variable, will be created newly, and it will exist until the closing curly bracket of f1, and after that it will be destroyed, and on the next call to f1 it will be created again, and on the completion of f1 execution function it will be terminated, and this process will continue as long as we keep calling f1. Similarly, the local variable main var, it will be created whenever this line number 16 where it is defined, it is executed, and it will continue to exist until the execution reaches the closing curly bracket, okay, which is the end of main on line number 23. So main var will exist until line number 23, okay, from line number 16 till line number 23. Okay, is it clear, the concept of lifetime of a local variable? time a variable is stored in memory until it is wiped deleted. Very good. Okay, that's the definition of a lifetime. And as you know, the local variables of function are created on stack whenever the function is called, and when the execution of that function is terminated, local variables on the stack are destroyed. Uzair, you want to say something? Saud, destroy हो जाता है तो value 0 नहीं हो जाती. Destroy means that memory space for that variable has now been allocated to something else. Okay, so another variable will get that memory space that was allocated to the previous local variable, and then that memory space will be used to store the value of the new variable. Is it clear? It's not about the value, it's about the memory space allocated to that variable. That memory space is taken from that variable and given to something else. So that we say that the previous variable has been destroyed now. Is it clear? Okay, I'll come back. Come to you, Farah. Saud, is it clear about your question? The value being 0. Okay. No response from Saud. So coming to your question, Farah. So when that function is called again, then new space is allocated for that variable on the stack. Okay, so new space will be allocated, and that new space will be used for that second time that function is called for that variable. And when the execution of the second function is also finished, the space for that variable again will be destroyed and given to something else. And when you call that function a third time, then again new space will be allocated for that variable a third time. Is it clear? Okay, good. So far about your question, memory allocation being random or not, it's not random. The compiler basically knows it when it compiles your code, it analyzes every function and it knows that this many variables are being used in this function. So it calculates the size of them, all of them together. And when that function is called, it creates a memory area, the size of the sum of all those variables on the stack for that function, and a part of that area is allocated to every variable. Okay, and I think the standard must define in some order in which these variables are allocated. I think the arguments are allocated first, and then the local variables in the order in which they are defined. Okay, so there is some order, it's not random allocation, and that order is defined by the standard of C++, and the compiler ensures that implementation. Okay, so if this is good, then what about, is the allocated area of the stack contiguous? Yes, it is contiguous. The sum that it calculates for all the arguments and for all the local variables, it calculates the sum and then it allocates a contiguous portion on the stack. Okay, and then within that contiguous portion, all the variables are placed in their particular order. Okay. Okay, so I was asking you guys, what about the lifetime of global variables? When does the global variable starts existing, and until which point the global variable will live or will exist? When are the global variables created? Very good. So it starts when defined, or we can say that it is created before the execution of main. Okay, before the execution of main starts, global variable is created, and it exists until the end of the program. Okay? The global variables, they exist until the execution of the program finishes, and they are accessible all the time from any function within the program. Okay, is it clear? We can only delete it manually when the program executes. No, you can't delete it. The system will create, if you're talking about the global variable, the system will create the global variables for you, and the system will delete global variables for you. You cannot delete it manually. Okay, it will be automatically destroyed when the program ends. Is it clear? No response, so I'm assuming the answer of my choice, which means everything is good. So there are a couple of more things when the global variable deleted. When the program ends, everything related to that program is destroyed, which means global variables included. Okay. So there are a couple of more things related to the scope, which we will pointer with array. I think we discussed this in last class, how, if you are asking how to use pointer with an array, the last class and the class before that. So I think you should watch the video, or look at the functions that I sent you last time. This maxnum1, maxnum2, maxnum3, and try to understand it yourself. If it is still not clear, then we will repeat it, but we will repeat it in the last class or last week. Okay. Before that, try to understand it yourself, or you can contact me separately at any time during the day. Okay, because in class we will try to, discuss topics which are new to everybody, or which most of the people do not understand. No, send me an email and try to get an appointment. You guys send a random message on MS Teams, which is email is a better and orderly way of communication. Once we are inside the appointment, then you can chat on Teams. But to get an appointment, please send an email. Recently or before the mids? Because recently I have not received any mail from you guys.
सर
Yes.
सर हम निमाज के लिए जा सकते हैं
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So there are a couple of things that are still we have to discuss about the scope. We'll do it in the next class. So now you guys mark your attendance here in the chat, and we'll continue from here in our next class. Okay. So mark your attendance here, and thank you very much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much, and I'll now disconnect.